own little typewriter, right? I'm gonna write my name all over this town with it in big letters.
Hey, stop him, somebody!
Get out of my way, Johnny! I'm gonna spit!
So, little known fact, I'm actually a big Sopranos fan. I mean, it should have been obvious by now, but what can you expect from a bunch of gamers? They don't even know what gutters are.
What gutters?
On the roof.
Where?
On the edge. The things that collect the water.
I don't know what you mean.
Don't get smart with me.
I don't know.
The drain pipes for the rain?
Also, those little Fallout videos you like so much. Yeah, actually, those were just stepping stones. Mere tests on my path to create the ultimate Sopranos fan theory. Though, to be fair, it was between this and the Sopranos analog horror video.
Carmela, can you shut the door? Carmela, can you please shut the door?
In all seriousness, this is going to be a weird video for the channel. But it's another stretch late in theory, so it kinda checks out. It's also my late tribute to fellow video game conspiracist Matt Pat, who just announced his retirement from YouTube this January. It's an end of something that helped inspire me to reach these levels I'm at right now. And just like I can't thank you guys enough for it, I can't thank him enough as well. So I hope this video will do. With all that said, in the good old goofy spirit of game theory and April Fool's Day, here's a theory of my own. That Tony Soprano, beloved protagonist of the HBO classic The Sopranos, is suffering in hell. In the Sopranos universe, there exists the supernatural. Ghosts, miracles, and visions of hell itself are all things characters in the show experience at some point or another. Surprisingly, it's easy to forget. These are all just really small happenings in a show that spans 78 hours, and what isn't overshadowed by the Soprano crime family's hijinks is often outright rationalized and explained away by characters.
That was a dream. Forget about it.
However, these explanations, though logical, are ultimately wrong. In the 2021 prequel film, The Many Saints of Newark, we learn that hell and the afterlife are very much the real deal. Hell is where one of the members of the Soprano crew, Christopher Moltisanti, narrates the movie from.
That's the guy, my Uncle Tony, the guy I went to hell for.
Basically, if Christopher's in hell, things don't fare all that well for Tony. Because for all of his sins, Chrissy is no Tony Soprano. Christopher, who's killed people, killed a dog, cheats on his loving fiancée Adriana, beats Adriana, ratted out Adriana, broken at least 7 of God's 10 commandments, and committed many more sins than that, isn't nearly as wicked as Tony is. Tony kills people, beats people, ruins lives, breaks people down gleefully, corrupts those around him, kills family, shows no remorse for it, and just generally becomes irredeemably evil by the end of the 6th season show. Even if you love Tony, do you honestly see him winding up in heaven? Even when he says he will?
We're soldiers, Soldiers don't go to hell.
We know this is wrong because of Chris. But if hell is real in The Sopranos, that raises another question. What's it like? What torment awaits one of TV's favorite sociopaths? Well, remember how I talked about the characters in the show, who see the supernatural in their lives but somehow or another dismiss it? They miss the meaning of what they witness. Well, maybe we're not all that different after all. Maybe we are seeing Tony's hell, and we just don't realize it. Let's go on a weird tangent for a second, but it's gonna make sense, I promise. There's this other show called American Horror Story. My mom recorded it back when cable was a thing, and I'd catch glimpses of it here and there. To be honest, I barely remember anything about it, other than there was a season about witches that had a talking head and Stevie Nicks was in it. But there was this one thing that really did stick with me about the show, and that was its depiction of hell. Because rather than being this fiery place filled with demons, Hell in American Horror Story is...
What the hell? You're Papa Legba. You live in a chicken shack?
No, darling. It's not the hell. It's your hell. This was the worst time of your life. Waiting on people who treated you like the piece of trash you thought you were. No power, no respect, and no future that you could see. Just grease in your hair and the smell of lard in your nose.
This was my first exposure to an idea of hell outside the fiery one. Hell being this infinite loop of your worst memory, replayed again and again for all eternity. And again, it stuck with me. Enough that I noticed the AMC show Preacher basically had the same idea. This is another show that I barely remember anything about, to be honest. There was an Irish vampire, Rorschach was in it, but what do I remember the most? The depiction of hell. The eternal loop of your worst memory. The absolute worst part of your life, on repeat for infinity. Years go by, and finally I get to watch a show worth remembering. The Sopranos. It's fantastic. The acting, the writing, it's depressing and moving and funny, like really funny. And then there's the time Chrissy gets shot and has a near-death experience.
I crossed over to the other side.
And he talks about what hell is like.
I saw my father in hell, and the bouncer said that I'd be there too when my time comes.
What bouncer?
The Emerald Piper. That's our hell. It's an Irish bar where it's St. Patrick's Day every day, forever. Mikey Palmisi and Brendan Fallone were there too. They're friends now. They were playing dice with 2 Roman soldiers and a bunch of the Irish guys.
Doesn't make sense.
And the Irish, they were winning every roll. My father said he loses every hand of cards he plays. And every night at midnight, they whack him the same way he was whacked in life, and it's painful. Night after night.
And suddenly the ooga booga part of my brain goes, hey, that's like the hell loop in American Horror Story with Stevie Nicks. But seriously, these are the clues we get of what hell is, and what Tony's hell will ultimately be. It has personalized settings, there's loops, and most importantly, Chrissy is the key to all this. The nature of hell itself is revealed through him. So we'll keep talking about him for a little bit. Christopher is a member of the Soprano crime family. He's a soldier for the mob. So, his hell involves being surrounded by soldiers, on the losing side of an eternal card game. He also learns that his father, Dickie Moltisanti, is stuck suffering in a loop. What seems to be implied here is that not only is hell personalized for each sinner, it targets one's greatest sin. Christopher's biggest sin is his pride, which gets revealed a couple of times in the show. One of which is another episode in season 2 called D-Girl. And while there's a lot to remember about that episode, one of them is that this is where Christopher chooses his destiny. Rather than following his dreams of becoming part of the film industry, here he fully embraces Tony Soprano. But it's wholly out of pride. He's not really doing this for Tony. Nor is he picking his crew out of any real love or loyalty for them. Tony had already told Christopher to knock it off with the screenwriter stuff.
Forget Hollywood screenplays, forget those distractions.
And yet, in this episode, he goes ahead and exposes true crime stories to the director of Iron Man. When Christopher makes his decision to choose Tony, it's out of his own wounded pride. For getting outplayed in Hollywood, he retreats fully into an underworld where there's no threat to his self-esteem. And remember, Christopher almost turns entirely against that underworld when he learns Adriana is an FBI informant in season 5. What snaps him out of it? His pride. Right before he goes through with running off, he sees his future in this man. He sees a man drained, tired, tied down by life, a regular existence. Christopher can't handle it. So... he lets his pride win. As a result, Chrissy's hell is that same pride being wounded for all eternity, losing to enemies, watching his father fear his own death, waiting to watch them die. And that's just what we learn in the show. In the movie, we get a Christopher fully in hell, spending the movie narrating over the life of his father Dickie. But we also get to witness more than just his father's life. Chrissy has to see the rise of a young Tony. He has to see what's supposed to be the golden years of the mob, and how it's really not all that great. And worst of all, he has to watch his father's rival humiliate him and succeed. I'm certain Sopranos creator David Chase, who co-wrote The Many Saints, meant for it to be a deconstruction of that glorious mafia past. But I do agree with fans that it is a bit underwhelming, especially compared to the TV show. The magic of the show is largely missing from the movie. And honestly, they botched Sil.
Oof, Maron, he looks terrible.
Funnily enough, that actually helps his theory a bit. It's like The Many Saints really is Chrissy's hell. Watching his father fail and die, forced to see this mystified age be nothing more than a dull mess, and his murderer get an okay origin story. An eternal attack against his pride. That's Christopher's hell. And it gives us the tools we need to finally learn what Tony's hell is. If hell in The Sopranos is personalized to your greatest sin, loop-like, and even lets you see into the lives of others, is Tony's hell The Sopranos? Is Tony's hell just him watching the entire show over and over again?
You know, Quasimodo predicted all this.
The way I see it, Tony's hell loop is watching the destruction of his life. We see things from his direct point of view, witnessing his world slowly darken and worsen over time. His failures, the betrayals from those in his life, his own betrayals, just plainly seeing what he was too selfish to realize all along. The same way Chris's hell is to watch the life of Dickie and his associates, seeing what he was too prideful to realize all along. Christopher's great sin was his pride. Tony's great sin was his selfishness, his disregard for the lives around him. Now in hell, he can't disregard anyone anymore. People's lives permanently intertwine with his own life loop, and he's forced to watch not only his own suffering forever, but the suffering of others he once ignored. That being said, this is going to be a huge stretch, since he does have a run-in with what seems to be a very specific personal hell. Like Christopher, Tony has a near-death experience of his own. In Season 6, when Tony gets shot by his dementia-ridden Uncle Junior, Tony becomes Kevin Finnerty, a businessman diagnosed with Alzheimer's and invited to a Finnerty family reunion. His memory issues cause him not to be able to recognize his own cousin Tony Blundetto, who he just killed in Season 5. His cousin, who is now trying to lead him inside a White House. It's a very unnerving scene, and it does raise the question, why wouldn't this White House be Tony's hell again upon his death? Especially when what seems to torment Tony during the show is fear of a family home. The thing he has a nightmare over, most likely due to the abuse suffered at the hands of his mother Livia, who he sees a silhouette of in both his nightmare and the White House. Plus, guess what we see in the final scene, which people speculate is a follow-up to Tony's death. Well, you gotta remember that Chris didn't have the same hell as his near-death experience of it. So why should Tony? For all we know, the coma hell is symbolic of the true hell waiting for Tony, who tries to live as someone he's not, a tough gangster, but always winds up coming home, returning to the childhood house in his heart, unable to escape the cycle of violence until... Don't stop. In the series finale of The Sopranos, Made in America, Tony dies. He enters a restaurant called Holston's to have a family dinner, waiting on his daughter Meadow for a non-hell eternity, only for there to be a sudden cut to black. Tony is shot dead. And I know it's left ambiguous. I know people will say the cut to black could mean a couple of three things, and he could have just as easily lived. But there's so much evidence to support Tony dying compared to living. The most significant being a message Christopher got in hell to bring to Tony.
3 o'clock.
And in the last scene, when this sinister guy eyes Tony and walks past him to the bathroom, where is he? The exact right side of Tony, his 3 o'clock. Like I said before, Chrissy is the key to all this. Also, for what it's worth, Tony would have a reason to get whacked in front of his family, even if it's against Mafia code. It's the same code Tony broke whacking Phil in the last episode. The New York crime families aren't going to be happy. So, be it New York or somebody else, Tony gets shot in the head.
Don't stop.
And the worst part of his life loops again. His descent as a human being, starting in Dr. Melfi's office, faced with the woman's statue towering over him, like his domineering mother. And then faced with Dr. Melfi herself, who on some subconscious level reminds Tony of his mother, an unwinnable reminder of his weakness. The loop has just begun. Let's return back to the Holston scene though. Tony doesn't have the choice, and I don't either, because there's a lot more to this scene. It's actually in researching people's interpretations of the ending where I found out I wasn't alone in thinking Tony's in hell. Except, whereas I think that's what the whole show is, his hell, a lot of people seem to believe it's just the final scene at Holston's. The darkness, the tension, the White House making another appearance, dividing Tony from his family like his death is about to. The background characters, some of which resemble those from Tony's life, as if this is some hellish mockery of his existence. A sick subversion of your life flashing before your eyes. One of these characters includes the members only jacket guy that ends up killing Tony. Except he looks a lot like the character Eugene, who was part of the Soprano crew, died in the first episode of season 6 due to Tony's selfishness, and who also wore a members only jacket right before he went into a restaurant to... And he's deliberately named in the credits because they wanted us to pay attention to this. It's a pretty blatant setup and payoff. However, what stood out to me the most about the scene was how Tony walks in and sees himself. This is Tony's POV. He walks in, he sees an empty seat. POV shot. Here's Tony looking annoyed, and then here's Tony's POV again, watching himself. To me, this is when we, the audience, and Tony merge as one. Right at the end, right before his death. The final clue we need to solve the puzzle. If Tony's hell is his point of view, then this is Tony in that hell. This is a face of a man who's seen everything we have countless times, now about to watch another death, another loop. It's also been noted that these first POV shots are very reminiscent of the ending scene in 2001, A Space Odyssey, where a main character continuously sees aged versions of himself in a strange loop. Then, he's reborn as an observer figure who's ascended life and death at the cost of their humanity. Likewise, Tony is stuck watching himself get increasingly older, since time passes with every hell loop. He becomes an observer who's overcome his death, but at a cost. And ultimately, he still remains the same man-child that got him into hell in the first place. While this might sound like a colossal stretch, David Chase is on record saying he was trying to capture the feeling of 2001's ending with his own ending, making it so that throughout the series finale, whenever Tony arrived someplace, he would see himself. Simply put, Made in America was an intentional homage to 2001. After all, this was one of David Chase's favorite films, in part due to its ambiguity which he wanted in his own work.
One of my favorite movies is 2001. I don't know who that baby in the bubble is.
Right. But you like that.
But I like it. I don't like to have every question answered.
Mm-hmm.
I like there to be possibilities here for me to think. That's why it's not like some kind of snotty attitude like, oh, well, you know, I have contempt for the audience. That's the kind of movies I like to go to see.
Not surprisingly, even 25 years later, people are still talking about The Sopranos. A show that respects its audience enough to let us think about what it's showing instead of blatantly just saying it, is still discussed and debated about to this day. I won't even be surprised if people really disagree with my idea on Tony's fate. Maybe we'll get some good rebuttals and learn he has a shot in purgatory after all.
Hell is hot. That's never been disputed by anybody. You didn't go to hell.
But one way or another, the path Tony sets himself on is one I wouldn't wish upon anybody, where he's constantly at risk of betrayal or death without any chance of escaping the mob life, where the further he falls because of it, the more he loses his soul and his loved ones, where he can see what he needs to do to become a better man, trying and trying, but just failing again and again. Even if you don't believe in this theory, or an afterlife for that matter, perhaps we can agree to one thing, that Tony really is in hell. April Fools!